Jax's revenge domain. The sound of a failing pressure vessel isn't a scream. It's a low, grinding moan that you feel in your bones before your ears register it. At 2:30 p.m. on a Thursday, that sound started deep in the guts of Unit 7. I was already moving before the digital alarms even caught up. I'm Roy Martinez, 48 years old, and for the past 22 years, I've been keeping this Gulf Coast refinery from becoming a crater. To most people, I look like just another guy in coveralls with grease under his fingernails. But I'm the shepherd of a very dangerous flock. "Danny!" I shouted over the rising whine of the turbines. "Grab the torque wrench kit. The pressure relief on the main line is sticking." Danny Garcia, my 24-year-old apprentice, scrambled for his gear. Good kid, former Marine with some rough edges, but he still got nervous when the red lights started flashing. Right now, the control board looked like a Christmas tree having a seizure. "Roy, the temperature sensors are reading 380 degrees, Danny yelled, his voice tight. "Shouldn't we dump the batch?" "No," I said, sliding under the massive steel belly of the processing unit. "If we dump now, we lose $3 million of product and contaminate the holding tanks for 2 weeks. It's just a stuck actuator. I need to bypass the hydraulic lock manually." I lay on my back, the cold concrete seeping through my coveralls. Above me, pipes hissed and groaned like something alive and angry. This plant was my life's work. I knew every bolt, every weld, every temperamental sensor. More importantly, I held master certification for high-pressure petroleum systems. There were only 2 other people in the state with that ticket, and both were retired. I reached up, locking my wrench onto the manual override. The metal was hot enough to cook an egg. I gritted my teeth and ignored the burns spreading across my knuckles. This was surgery performed with a 40-pound wrench. "Roy, we've got company," Danny hissed, kicking my boot. "Not now, kid. Almost got it." "Mr. Martinez!" A voice cut through the machinery noise. It wasn't the urgent tone of an engineer. It was the polished, irritated drawl of someone who'd never sweated through a 12-hour shift in his life. I gave the valve one final quarter turn. The grinding sound dropped an octave. Pressure released with a satisfying hiss. The beast was tamed, at least for now. I slid out from under the unit, wiping grease from my forehead with a rag that was already black. Standing there in a tailored suit that probably cost more than my truck was Glenn Powell, our new efficiency director. He'd been here 3 weeks and had already managed to cut the safety training budget by 30% and eliminate overtime for maintenance. "Is there a problem, Mr. Powell?" I asked, still breathing hard from the adrenaline. "The problem, Roy," he said, looking at the grease on my hands like I was carrying plague, "is that every time I walk down here, you're lying on the floor. We're running a petroleum refinery, not a backyard garage." I blinked. The rush from preventing a potential explosion was still coursing through me. I was calibrating the pressure relief valve. If I hadn't done that, the unit would have scrammed. You'd have lost the batch. Glenn laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound that echoed off the steel tanks. "Always the drama with you maintenance guys. Critical failure this, emergency that. It's all theater to justify your overtime. I've looked at the logs, Roy. You spend 4 hours a day on preventive checks. You know what I call that? Wasting time." Danny stepped forward, looking scared but determined. "Sir, Roy is the only one certified to—" "Quiet," Glenn snapped, not even looking at the kid. He kept his eyes pinned on me. "I was brought here to trim fat. And Roy, looking at your salary versus your output, you're looking very heavy." The alarms finally went quiet, transitioning to steady green. I had just saved the day, and this man was looking at me like I'd robbed the petty cash fund. I wiped my hands slowly. I'd dealt with corporate types before, bean counters who think spreadsheets reflect reality. Usually you nod, throw some technical jargon at them, and they retreat to their air-conditioned offices. "Mr. Powell," I said, keeping my voice level, "I understand you have metrics to hit, but this equipment is 20 years old. It requires hands-on maintenance. Those preventive checks you see are me manually balancing the system so it doesn't fail catastrophically. If I stop doing them, people get hurt." Glenn smirked like he was explaining arithmetic to a child. "See, that's the attitude. You think you're indispensable. You think because you've been here since they poured the foundation that you own the place. You don't. This is a business. Businesses run on efficiency, not folklore." "The pressure systems aren't folklore," I said, my patience wearing thin. "They're physics, and physics doesn't negotiate." Glenn's face flushed red. He stepped closer, invading my space. He smelled like expensive cologne and insecurity. Roy, I don't need lectures from a wrench turner about how to run a business. I need employees who follow orders and work efficiently. You were lying on the floor during peak production hours. I was preventing an explosion. You were napping, Glenn shouted, his voice echoing through the unit. The accusation hung there like smoke. Danny gasped. Two other workers, Perry Adams and Milton Ross, stopped their forklifts to watch. You're firing me? I asked, the realization hitting me like cold water. I'm terminating you for cause, Glenn declared, straightening his tie. Gross misconduct, wasting company time, insubordination. Frankly, you're a poor fit for the modern direction of Gulf Coast Petrochemical. He pulled a folded paper from his jacket pocket. He'd come down here prepared. This wasn't about the valve. This was a hit job. Hand over your badge and your keys, Glenn said, extending a manicured hand. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the arrogance, the complete ignorance of the forces he was messing with. Then a strange calm washed over me. Okay, I said softly. Glenn blinked, surprised by the lack of a fight. You're the boss, I said. I unclipped my ID badge and pulled out my master key ring, the one with access to the chemical storage, the emergency lockouts, and the manual override panels. I dropped them into his hand. They were heavy. His hand dipped under the weight. You know, I said, leaning in slightly, the pressure relief system on Unit 5 needs to be recalibrated every 8 hours. If you don't, the backup sensors fail. When that happens, you're flying blind. Glenn sneered. We have manuals for that. We don't need folklore. Get your things. You have 10 minutes. I looked at Danny. The kid looked like someone had shot his dog. Watch the gauges, kid, I whispered to him. And when they hit red, run. My locker was a battered metal box covered in vendor stickers, Halliburton, Baker Hughes, Cameron. Inside were photos of my daughter Helen from kindergarten to her engineering graduation last year. I packed them into a cardboard box along with my personal torque wrench and my lucky multimeter. Roy. I turned. It was Patricia Wells from HR. She was a good woman, perpetually stressed, with gray roots showing through her dye job. I just got the termination email, she whispered, looking over her shoulder. Roy, I tried to tell him you're protected under the union contract, but he bypassed me. Went straight to the VP. It's okay, Patricia. He wants to cut costs. I'm the highest paid guy on the maintenance roster. But who's going to sign the safety compliance logs? She asked, eyes wide. The quarterly audit is next Tuesday. If those logs aren't signed by a certified technician, we're operating illegally. Not my problem anymore, I said, closing my locker. Patricia looked at the box in my hands. He marked you as do not rehire. Stripped your severance package. That stung. 22 years. I'd missed birthdays, anniversaries, holidays to keep this place running through hurricanes and ice storms. And I was walking out with nothing but a box of junk. He can mark whatever he wants, I said. He's about to learn that you can't run a $250 million refinery with an MBA and an attitude. I walked onto the main floor. The hum was different now. To anyone else it sounded normal, but I could hear the subtle dissonance. Unit 3 was vibrating too hard. The cooling system was cycling too fast. The machine was already missing me. I passed the control room. Danny was standing there staring at the screens, his hand raised in a hesitant wave. I nodded back. Glenn was waiting by security, arms crossed, making sure I didn't steal office supplies. Don't worry about the uniform, he called out. We'll donate it. I stopped in front of him. I was 6'2", broad-shouldered from decades of heavy lifting. He was 5'9" in elevator shoes. Glenn, I said, voice low enough that only he could hear. The pressure relief I just fixed is a temporary patch. It needs a permanent seal. I ordered the part. It's in the warehouse. Don't rely on that patch for more than 24 hours. Glenn laughed, shaking his head. Pathetic. Even on your way out, you're trying to sound important. Goodbye, Roy. I pushed through the turnstile. The Gulf Coast humidity hit my face. I walked to my F-150, placed the box on the passenger seat, and sat for a moment looking at the massive steel structure against the blue sky. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call Helen yet. Instead, I dialed a number I hadn't used in 5 years. Stevens Legal Group. I need to speak to Carl, I said. Mr. Stevens is in court. Who's calling? Tell him it's Roy Martinez. Tell him the Texan owes him a favor. And tell him I just found a very expensive accident waiting to happen. My house was too quiet. For 22 years, my life had run on shift schedules. Up at 4:30, coffee, drive, work, home by 7. Now at 10 a.m. on a Friday, I was sitting at my kitchen table watching sunlight move across the floor. My phone had been buzzing nonstop since yesterday. Mostly calls from the plant, guys asking what the hell happened, supervisors wanting to know about handover procedures. I let them go to voicemail. Then Helen called. Her voice was sharp, worried. "Dad, Danny just texted me. He said security escorted you out. What's going on?" Helen was 26, sharp as a tack, worked as a process engineer for ExxonMobil downtown. She had my stubborn streak and her mother's brains. "I got fired, sweetheart," I said, taking a sip of lukewarm coffee. Glenn Powell decided I was redundant. Redundant? Dad, you are the plant. You wrote half the safety protocols. Did you sign the termination papers? No, just handed over my keys and left. Good. Don't sign anything. I'm coming over. Helen, you have work. I'm taking a personal day. Don't answer the phone for anyone until I get there. She hung up before I could argue. 10 minutes later, a sleek sedan pulled into my driveway. It looked predatory. Carl Stevens stepped out. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage and still looked like he could win a bar fight. "Roy," he boomed, walking up the porch steps, "you look terrible. Retirement doesn't suit you. Thanks for coming, Carl. For the man who pulled me out of that chemical fire in '99, I'd drive from Alaska." We shook hands. He had a grip like a vice. Helen arrived 10 minutes later with her laptop and a bag of breakfast tacos. She didn't hug me. She set up a command center on my dining table. "Okay," she said, typing furiously. "I'm looking at your contract. They owe you 6 months severance unless they can prove gross negligence. Did you break anything?" "No," I said, unwrapping a taco. "I fixed a pressure valve that was about to blow. So we have wrongful termination," Helen muttered. "But Dad," Danny texted again. "He says Glenn ordered new pressure sensors yesterday, digital ones." I froze. "Already?" "Yeah, he expedited them. Wants them installed today." I closed my eyes. The digital sensors ran on 5-volt systems. The analog pressure vessels were 24-volt. If he connected them. "What happens?" Carl asked, reading my expression. "The sensors fry instantly. The computer reads 0 pressure because there's no signal. But the actual pressure keeps building." "Does Danny know this?" "Danny knows. But Danny has a mortgage and a baby on the way. If Glenn tells him to install them, he'll install them." Helen looked at me, her face pale. "Dad, if that happens..." "I know." As if summoned by our conversation, my phone rang. It was Danny. "Answer it," Carl commanded. "Put it on speaker." I swiped the screen. "Danny?" "Oh God," Danny was whispering. I could hear the plant's hum in the background. It sounded wrong, wobbly. "He made us install them. The sensors. And they blew immediately, just like you said. Smoke, sparks, everything. But Glenn, he won't let us shut down." "What?" "He said the sensors. We're defective. He said to bypass the safety cutoffs and run manual. Said we can't miss the shipment quota." I looked at Carl. His face had gone white. "Danny, listen carefully. Running that unit without pressure monitoring is like driving blindfolded at 90 miles an hour. You need to evacuate." "I can't. He's standing right here. Says anyone who leaves gets fired." "Roy, the pipes are shaking. I can hear them. Pull the fire alarm if you have to. Just get everyone out." The line went dead. "He hung up," I said. "He's bypassing federal safety protocols," Carl said, standing up and buttoning his jacket. "That's not negligence anymore. That's criminal recklessness." "We have to go," I said, grabbing my keys. "I'm driving," Carl said. The drive usually took 25 minutes. Carl made it in 12, weaving through traffic like a maniac while I monitored the emergency scanner on Helen's phone. "Nothing on the scanner yet," Helen said from the back seat. "That's good, right?" "Means it hasn't blown yet," I said. When we pulled up to the main gate, Ralph Murphy, the security guard I'd known for years, stepped out to block us. "Roy, you can't come in. Mr. Powell gave strict orders." "Ralph, is the plant shaking?" Ralph looked back at the main building. "Yeah, started about 10 minutes ago. Feels like an earthquake." "Open the gate, Ralph," Carl barked. "I'm Carl Stevens, legal counsel." If you don't open that gate and this plant explodes, you'll be named as accessory to manslaughter. Ralph looked at Carl's suit, then at the trembling ground, then at me. Go, he said, hitting the button. We tore up the access road. The closer we got, the louder it became. Not a hum anymore. A roar, the sound of superheated petrochemicals forcing their way through joints that weren't designed for it. We slammed to a halt in front of the admin building. I jumped out. The smell hit me immediately. That sweet, acrid stench of a chemical leak. Leak, I yelled. The gaskets are failing. I ran for the side entrance that led to the maintenance bay. Carl and Helen were right behind me. I burst onto the floor. It was chaos. Steam hissed from multiple joints. The floor was slick with condensation. The noise was deafening. In the center of it all, by the main control panel, stood Glenn Powell. He was screaming at Danny, who was frantically typing on a keyboard that wasn't responding. "Override it," Glenn was yelling. "Force the system reset." "I can't," Danny screamed back. "The whole logic board is fried." I didn't think. I ran. "Get away from the panel," I roared. Glenn turned, his face red with rage. "Security, get him!" Boom! A pipe overhead burst. A jet of superheated steam slammed into the concrete just 3 feet from Glenn, knocking him off his feet. The shockwave rattled my teeth. "The emergency relief valves are stuck," Danny yelled, pointing at the manual gauges. The needles were buried in the red zone. Pressure's at 200 psi and climbing. Burst pressure is 250. I looked at the setup. The digital sensors Glenn had installed had fried the control board. The computer wouldn't open the relief valves because it thought pressure was 0, and the mechanical backups were jammed with chemical residue that had hardened like concrete. "We have to dump it manually," I shouted, grabbing a pipe wrench from the emergency kit. "You can't!" Glenn scrambled to his feet, his suit soaked and ruined. "That's $4 million of product." I ignored him. I looked at Carl. "Get him out of here." Carl didn't hesitate. He grabbed Glenn by his expensive jacket collar and dragged him toward the exit. "Danny, Helen, go," I ordered. "I'm staying," Danny said, grabbing another wrench. "I know the backup system." "Me too," Helen said. "I can read the pressure calculations." I didn't have time to argue. "Unit 6, emergency dump valve. It's seized shut." We ran to the back of the processing unit. The heat was intense. Metal groaned and screamed as it stretched beyond its limits. "On 3, I yelled, jamming my wrench into the valve wheel. Danny and Helen did the same. 1, 2, 3. We pulled. My muscles screamed. Blood pounded in my temples. The wheel didn't budge. "Again!" I roared. Crack! The rust gave way. The wheel spun. A massive whoosh shook the building as the emergency dump opened. A geyser of chemical sludge shot into the containment basin outside. The pressure gauges dropped. 200, 150, 100. The roar faded to a hiss. The shaking stopped. I slumped against the tank, gasping. My hands were shaking. Danny slid down the wall, his face gray. "We did it," he whispered. Standing in the doorway, soaked and trembling, was Glenn Powell. Behind him, holding a phone that had recorded everything, was Carl Stevens. "Roy," Glenn stammered, all his arrogance washed away by steam and fear. You saved it." I stood up slowly. I walked over to him and flicked a glob of chemical residue onto his $1,000 shoes. "I didn't do it for you," I said. "Now get off my floor." The silence after. Near disaster is deceptive. We'd prevented an explosion, but the plant was wounded. The emergency dump had saved the building, but the chemical slurry was cooling rapidly in the pipes, turning to concrete. "It's hardening," I said, my voice echoing in the cavernous space. I looked at the gauges, now reading 0. The unit is safe, but the lines are clogged. The whole system is seizing up as we speak. Glenn stared at the machinery like a child who'd just broken a priceless vase. "Can we flush it out?" he asked weakly. "With what?" I laughed harshly. "The control system is fried. The sensors are dead. Even if we could restart the pumps, the mixture is already too thick. You'd burn out the motors in seconds." "So production is stopped?" "Stopped? Glenn, you don't understand. You've bricked the plant. Those pipes are filled with tons of hardening polymer. You need to replace everything. The valves, the manifolds, the heat exchangers. You're looking at an 8-month shutdown minimum." The color drained from his face. 8 months? The quarterly projections, the acquisition. He'd said too much. Carl stepped forward, phone still recording. Acquisition? Did you say acquisition? Glenn flinched. I said production targets. You said acquisition, Carl corrected. And judging by your reaction to an 8-month shutdown, I'm guessing your bonus was tied to short-term performance metrics that just evaporated. 2 hours later, we were back at my kitchen table. Carl was making phone calls while Helen researched stock movements on her laptop. Gulf Coast petrochemical stock down 24% in after-hours trading, she announced. Bloomberg is reporting catastrophic equipment failure and potential environmental concerns. There wasn't an environmental breach, I said. The containment system worked perfectly. Wall Street doesn't know that, Carl said, hanging up his phone. They just see a major refinery offline indefinitely. Glenn Powell cost this company about $500 million in market cap today. My phone rang. The caller ID showed a local number I didn't recognize. Roy Martinez, this is Howard Fleming, CEO of Gulf Coast Petrochemical. We need to talk. Now. An hour later, a black town car pulled up to my house. Fleming stepped out, a tired-looking man in his 60s wearing a rumpled suit. His tie was loosened, his hair disheveled. Roy, he said, walking up my path, it's been too long. We went inside. Carl was waiting with fresh coffee and his legal pad ready. Helen had her laptop open, documents spread across the table. Mr. Stevens, Fleming nodded to Carl. Then he looked at me. Roy, I won't sugarcoat this. We're hemorrhaging money. The refinery is dead. My engineers flew in from Houston, say 8 months minimum to rebuild. Sounds about right, I said. They also said if someone knew the specific layout of the auxiliary bypass systems, the ones installed during the '98 expansion that aren't on the digital blueprints, we might get units 1 and 2 running in 2 weeks while we rebuild the rest. I stayed silent. I knew those systems. I'd designed them after Hurricane Rita taught us about redundancy. Glenn Powell tells me you sabotaged the sensors, Fleming said, watching my face carefully. Carl slid a document across the table. That's a copy of the safety warning Mr. Martinez emailed to Mr. Powell's office 1 week before the incident. Mr. Powell also received a hard copy delivered to his desk. Fleming read it. His face darkened with each line. He got this warning about sensor incompatibility, along with witness testimony that he bypassed union safety protocols, ordered manual overrides during critical system failure, and threatened to fire anyone who evacuated, Carl said. Oh, and we have his recorded statements about acquisition bonuses. Fleming crumpled the paper. He's done. I'll have security escort him out tonight. He looked at me. Roy, I need you back. Full reinstatement, 40% raise, signing bonus. Just please help us get running again. I don't want my job back, I said. Fleming blinked. Then what do you want? I want to be a consultant. Employees get fired when managers don't like their work boots. Consultants have contracts with termination clauses. Carl opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick document bound in blue covers. He slid it across the table. This is the proposal for Martinez Industrial Solutions, Carl said. Limited liability company formed this morning. Roy is the principal. Fleming put on his reading glasses and flipped through the pages. $500 an hour? Roy, that's quadruple your old salary. It includes overhead, I said calmly, and the stupidity tax. The what? The premium for fixing disasters created by management who ignore their experts. Plus, the contract gives me absolute authority over safety protocols. No one overrides my decisions. Not the plant manager, not the VP, not you. Fleming looked at his phone. The stock ticker was probably bleeding another few million while he hesitated. If we agree, can you get Unit 2 running? I can bypass the damaged manifolds using the auxiliary steam lines, I said. It's a technique I developed after Hurricane Rita. I can have product flowing in 72 hours, but I need Danny back, promoted to senior systems technician. Fleming took out his pen and signed without hesitation. Welcome back, Mr. Consultant, he said. 8 months later, I'm standing on the observation deck overlooking the rebuilt refinery. New piping gleams under LED lights, all systems running smooth and steady. Danny's voice crackles over the radio from the control room. He's wearing a tie now, but still keeps a wrench in his pocket. All green, Roy. Shift logged and signed off. I'm not wearing coveralls anymore. Company polo with Martinez Industrial Solutions embroidered on the chest. I consult now. Inspect, advise, and solve problems that others created. Gulf Coast renewed my contract for 3 years, but they're not my only client. Word travels fast in this industry. When you're the guy who saved a $250 million refinery from total destruction, other facilities get curious. I've got 6 clients now across Texas and Louisiana. Hired 4 other experienced engineers, guys like me who got pushed aside for being expensive. My income tripled, but more importantly, my time is my own. Glenn Powell? He pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment and securities fraud. Turns out he was shorting company stock while feeding operational intelligence to a hedge fund planning a hostile takeover. His scheme was to sabotage the refinery's value so they could acquire it cheap. He lost everything. Me? I learned that expertise has value, but only if you know how to protect it. Document everything. If you warn management about problems, do it in writing. Copy yourself. That paper trail saved my career. Get certified. Don't just be good at your job. Make yourself legally indispensable through credentials they can't ignore. Know your walking price. The power to walk away is the only real leverage you have. They called me outdated. They called me expensive. Now they call me sir. And my invoice is due on the 1st of every month. Your expertise isn't just what you know. It's what happens when you're not there to know it. The best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting paid what you're actually worth.